Congratulations on making it to level 2. Let's take our number lines to the next level. So we are got a bunch of rational numbers here, but we are still going to follow those same steps as before with figuring out our endpoints and whether or not we need 0 first, then our scale, and then dot and label the numbers we actually need to graph. Okay, so let's get to it. So when I look at these numbers, I see that we have positive and negative numbers, so we do need to have 0 on there. And when we look to see how far those numbers, about what I'm going to count by for my scale. So I could do just by ones, but that's going to be a big gap for these numbers that are between 0 and 1, like half, negative 0.3, negative 3/4. Those are going to fall between 0 and 1 or 0 and negative 1. And so I'm going to decide to count by half. So let me get my tick marks on here. And let's get our scale put on there. So this is what I decided to do based off of the numbers that we have. Okay, so I've got 0 in the middle, 2, negative 2 are our endpoints because of how far the numbers are, and I chose to count by halves. You can do that with decimals or fractions, whatever you prefer, because that seems to narrow our number line down without being too small or too spread out. So it kind of is a nice in the middle choice. So let's go ahead and plot these numbers now that we've got our endpoints and scale figured out. Okay. So I'm going to plot 1.75, and here's how I approach these numbers to help kind of narrow down where they should go. I first look to see if they are positive or negative, so I know whether they should be to the right or the left of 0. This is positive, so we know it's going to the right. The next thing I look for is let's narrow down which section of our number line is going to fall in, because then I know about where it should go. So we have a 1 point something, so I know it's got to be to the right of 1 because it's going to be bigger. It's 1 and something else. Now I just have to figure out if it's between 1 and 1.5 or 1.5 and 2. Because it's 1.7, I'm just looking at that next place value, 7, and then whatever comes behind it, I know it's going to be between 1.5 and 2. 1.75 happens to be exactly halfway between 1.5 and 2. Give me a second, my dot's just going a little slow. There we go. It's going to go right in the middle of those two, so I'm going to put my dot there and label it with my numbers. So go ahead and do that on yours if you haven't already. Feel free to pause if you need to catch up. The next one is 1/2. 1/2, we've talked about before, is the exact same thing as 0.5. So that's why it was nice that I counted by halves, because that's going to go exactly on my tick mark for 0.5. We're going to label that. It's a positive number. I knew that, so it was going to the right of 0. We have negative 0.3, so I know that's going to go to the left of 0. And since it's negative 0 point something, I know it has to be near the negative 0.5. Well, I know that negative 0.3 is going to come before that, so I'm going to go a little before negative 0.5. and place my negative 0.3 roughly there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but right about there, give or take. I'll scooch it just a little, maybe. The next number is super simple. It's just 0. We know where that goes. It goes right in the middle. Make sure, again, still need a dot and label because those top numbers represent the numbers we're actually graphing. Bottom just represents our scale. So we still need to put our dot and label for both of these, even though they're a part of our scale. All right, just a couple more. Negative 1 and 1/4. Negative means we're going to the left of 0. Negative 1 and 1/4 means that we're going to be a little bit past negative 1. And I know that I'm not going past my negative 1.5 because I'd be going to negative 1/2, and 1/4 is smaller than that. Or in this case, bigger since we're talking about negatives. So I'm actually going to go right in between negative 1 and negative 1 and 1/2. That's exactly where negative 1 and 1/4 would fall. Negative 2 is pretty simple. Positive 2 is pretty simple. It's going to be right on 2, our endpoint there. That's an easy one. I love when we get easy ones like that. And our last one, negative 3/4. So again, negative means that we're going to the left. And negative 3/4, well, negative 1/4 would be the same as negative 0.25, which would be right here. So I know it must be in the same spot, but just farther, right? I'm at 3/4, not 1/4. So I'm going to go right in between negative 1/2 and negative 1. If you need help with some of that number sense, please feel free to ask, but that's what our number line should look like with our dots and labels and scales. Let's do one more. We're going to do a vertical number line for this next one. I'm not going to take too long to explain the endpoints on it. My screen's taking a little time to switch. It's going a little slow. There we go. Oops, too far. But we do want to follow those same patterns of figuring out those 3 steps that we've talked about before. So I have negative half, 0.71, 1/4, negative 0.65, so I notice I have positives and negatives, so we do need 0. The farthest one from 0 is 1, so instead of my endpoints being 2 and negative 2, it's going to be 1 and negative 1. I am still going to count by halves, though, for me, because I think if you have that halfway point, it's very helpful to narrow down where these numbers should go. If we just went from 0 to 1, it'd be kind of a big amount of space, and so this will help us with that halfway point as a benchmark to decide where numbers should go, okay? So let's get going. I'm going to go ahead and do the easy ones first. So I know that negative half is the same as negative 0.5, so I'm going to go ahead and get that one taken care of. Pretty simple there. I love it when it falls right on our scale like that. And by the way, if you need to pause the video to catch up, you know I just have these typed already, so if you need to catch up, feel free to do that. I'm going to jump to 1 just because that is super easy. It's one of our endpoints, so we know that our 1 is going right there. So I'm going to get that one out of the way. All right, the last 3 are just a touch harder, but we can do it. 0.7 is going to be positive. And by the way, I know we talked about this before, but with a vertical number line, remember we have 0 in the middle still, but going up is going to be positive, down is negative, right? Think of like a thermometer. And so that's just a little different than our horizontal number line where numbers to the right are positive and left is negative, things like that. So it's just up and down instead of right and left. Anywho, so 0.7 is positive, so it's going to be up from 0. And it's 0.7, so it's going to be past 0.5. So I know I'm going to be just a little bit past it, like not quite to halfway, but pretty close. So that's where we're putting our 0.7 at, or 7/10. 1/4 again is positive, and I know that's the same as 0.25, which is going to fall right in between our 0 and 0.5, so right about there. And then our last one is a negative number, so we're going to go down from 0. We got negative 0.65, which is going to be just a little bit past our negative 0.5, so roughly there. And I'm going to just tuck this under there, okay? I do believe you have an activity to do, and then after that activity you should be getting a quick check, so please don't forget that. I want to make sure you're practicing these, really understanding them, because there are a lot of moving parts to it. So activity and then quick check. Good luck. You've got this.